Hello, good morning children. Today we are going to learn another chapter from history, chapter number 6, the age of the Guptas. Let us start with the introduction. The period about 2 centuries from early 4th century, that means here I have mentioned the date, it is underlined also, you could see that AD 320 to 540 is known as the imperial age of Guptas. So let us find out why is the period known as imperial age. It is known as imperial age because Guptas were India's first empire builders. Then during this Gupta's period, India made progress in the field of education, science and culture, means here all-round development in all the fields. That's why this period is also known as classical age or the golden age of Indian history. Then let us find out what are the main historical sources that provides information about the Guptas. First it is the literary source, accounts of Faiyan, and secondly the archaeological source, Allahabad pillar inscription. So first we study the literary source, that means here accounts given by Faiyan. First is about the Faiyan. Who was this Faiyan? Why did he come to India? What is his contribution to give the information about Guptas? Faiyan he visited in 399. He lived here up to 411 AD. A Chinese pilgrim visited India during the reign of Chandragupta II. Don't get confused with Chandragupta II and Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya was the founder of Maurya Empire, and here just the Chandragupta. Chandragupta II was popularly known as Vikramaditya also. So we will study about him later. Then this Faiyan, he stayed for the 6 years in India. Then why did he come to India? He came to India in search of the Buddhist books of discipline that he wanted to be known to the people of China. So during his visit, he visited all these places. Which are those places? Mathura, Pataliputra, Kanauj, Kapilavastu. Then what is that? Kushinagar, Vaishali, Kashi and Rajagriha. And he made a careful, unbiased observation. That means he did not listen to the people or heard all the false things. He observed himself about the conditions of the time and he wrote a book. That means he gave all his views in a book that popularly known as the Accounts of Faiyan. The book's name is Fo Ho Ki. That means here the travels of Faiyan. So let us find out what did he mention, that means describe in his book Fo Ho Ki. According to Faiyan's account, Magadha was a prosperous country with a large towns teeming with wealthy population. Secondly, here Pataliputra was a flourishing city with a numerous charitable institutions, including a hospital endowed by benevolent citizens. Third point here, although the people were wealthy, they led simple lives, generally observing the Buddhist rules of conduct. Then Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Buddhism and Jainism were the main religions. People, however, had no ill will towards other sects. That means they were living harmoniously. Hindu gods and goddesses were depicted on coins and also in sculptures and paintings. Then the penal code was mild and the offences were ordinarily punished by fines only. Means here there were no strict punishments, even then people were living harmoniously and peacefully. So from all these above accounts it can be inferred that Gupta Empire was prosperous and governed by enlightened principles. And one thing you notice here children, these people, Faiyan, who was from China, he came to India to gain the knowledge. Okay, next we move to this another historical source, that is the archaeological source. Allahabad pillar inscription. Now let us study the archaeological source Allahabad pillar inscription. This Allahabad pillar inscription is the most important epigraphic evidence of the imperial Guptas, and it was composed by Arisena. This Arisena was the court poet of Samudragupta. Allahabad pillar inscription is also known as Prayaga Prashasti, is written in praise of Samudragupta. So what is meant by Prashasti? Prashasti is a Sanskrit word that means in praise of. It was used especially in the praise of king. The Prashasti described the king as equal to the gods. Though Prashasti was composed for kings earlier also, they began to be used widely during the period of Guptas. Then, what information do we get from this Allahabad pillar? It describes the reign of the Guptas in ancient India. It provides an impressive list of kings and the tribal republics that were conquered by Samudragupta, especially Samudragupta's military achievements. Then the inscription is also gives importance, that means it is most important because of the political geography of India, that it indicates by naming the different kings, that means the contemporary kings of the Guptas and also the people who are populated India in the first half of the 4th century AD. Means here it gives you the political, economic, social and the cultural achievements of Gupta's period also in brief. Okay children, then we move to the political history. That means here the most important rulers of this Gupta age. Now we are going to learn the reign of Gupta period. That means the political history of the Gupta period. The history of the first rulers of the Gupta dynasty, that means the founder Sri Gupta and his son Ghatotkacha, is obscure. That means not much given importance. So it is believed that Gupta era originated with the reign of Chandragupta first. That's why the rulers are mentioned from this Chandragupta first. So his reign was 320 to 335. And then he was succeeded by his son Samudragupta. You could see that 335 to 375 CE. Then Samudragupta was followed by Chandragupta II, 375 to 414 CE. Then he was succeeded by his son Kumaragupta, 414 to 455 CE. Then the last one here, Skandagupta, 455 to 467 CE. This is the political hierarchy, means the most important rulers of the Gupta age. So in this we are not going to learn the every one here. We are going to give importance only to this Samudragupta and the Chandragupta II. Okay children, we'll then start with the Samudragupta. Now you are watching Samudragupta. His period was from 335 AD to 375 AD. He was the son of Chandragupta first. Much of information about him is obtained from Allahabad pillar inscription composed by his court poet Arisena. So according to the inscription, he was a great conqueror, an able statesman, as well as a patron of arts. And his empire was extended from Brahmaputra in the east to rivers Yamuna and Chambal in the west, and from Himalayas in the north to Narmada in the south. So you could find out his extension of his empire in this map. You could see that, and even about his conquest dotted here in the red line, and even about his achievements, about his campaigns, it is given clearly here. The description is also there, so you can go through that. So this Samudragupta was compared to Napoleon as well as Alexander. Let us find out why was he compared to Napoleon and Alexander. He was compared to Napoleon, that means here it is because of his bravery and generalship. And next, further extension of his empire up to the Chambal river by defeating the Nagas of Mathura, Gwalior and Harichhatra. Like that, he was compared to Alexander because of his famous Deccan campaign. He covered more than 3000 miles through the dense forest. And another important nature of this Samudragupta is here, though he defeated many powerful rulers, he did not annex southern territories. He made the southern kings accept his suzerainty and allowed them to rule. Now let us find out. Allahabad pillar inscription describes Samudragupta's and 4 different kinds of rulers and tell us about the Samudragupta's policies towards them. That means much about his campaigns. So the first campaign here, that means the 9 rulers of Aryavarta. You can see that 9 rule campaign in Aryavarta. Aryavarta means nothing but the present the states like major parts of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. You could see that this is what it says, that Aryavarta. Then included the 9 states, and these kingdoms were made as a part of Samudragupta's empire, and they were ruled directly by him. That is in the north. Then it is with the south. Dakshinapata. Dakshinapata means towards the campaign towards the south. The 12 rulers of Dakshinapata means here the South India. They were surrendered to Samudragupta. Here the rulers of Dakshinapata, over 12 in number, surrendered to Samudragupta after being defeated, but he did not annex these kingdoms because he realized that it would not be easy to control such a vast empire without proper transport and communication facilities. You see that how genius he was and politically strong. Though he conquered these territories, he did not start direct rule because of all these problems. So he allowed them to rule again. But that means here he allowed them means he gave back the territories to them and gave them the permission to rule. But these rulers accepted him as their overlord and paid tribute. Means he was very genius. Next is a campaign towards the frontier states of the east as well as the western India. These included the Himalayan kingdoms of Assam, Nepal, coastal Bengal, the kingdoms of Ganga Delta and the tribal republics of northwest. They too accepted his power, followed his orders and brought tribute and attended his court. Next it is the northwestern kingdom and also Sri Lanka. In the northwest, that means here who are the people who came under his suzerainty. So here the descendants of Kushanas, the Shakas, the rulers of Sri Lanka, all they subjugated to Samudragupta and accepted to pay the tribute and offered their daughters also in marriage. That means here all the enmity ended with the matrimonial alliances. Okay, this is about the main campaigns of Samudragupta, and along with that you could see that he made alliances, means he married some of the daughters of these rulers. According to Samudragupta's court poet, that means Harisena, Samudragupta, after his campaigns, he performed an Ashwamedha Yajna or the horse sacrifice. And Samudragupta was not only a brave warrior and conqueror, but also a great ruler, a musician and also a poet. In one of his coins, he is shown playing the veena. Samudragupta issued 8 types of coins made of gold, and his court was full of great scholars and also the literary persons. You could see some of the coins here, the coins of Gupta period. This is one of the Gupta's period, that Samudragupta's playing veena. This is one of the coin here. Next we are going to learn about Chandragupta II, was popularly known as Vikramaditya also. So his rule is from 375 to 415 AD. Chandragupta II was succeeded by his father Samudragupta. He was also known as Vikramaditya. The meaning of the word Vikramaditya means one whose splendor equal of the sun. So, like his father, he inherited the military genius and extended the Gupta Empire by conquest of his own. He annexed the territories of Sakas of Malwa, Gujarat and Saurashtra. For this, he was given the title Shakari, or you say the conqueror of Shakas. Then, according to the historians, he entered into, that means here, Chandragupta II entered into matrimonial alliances as a part of his foreign policy. Means instead of having the enmity, he extended the alliances and he married some of the daughters of the enemy rulers and made it as an alliance. In the medieval period, you could see the same trend was followed by Akbar also, that we are going to study in the coming chapters. So this Chandragupta II, the first conquest was led to the Western India, that I already told you, Malwa, Gujarat and Saurashtra. Thus the trade was carried on through the ports of the Western India such as Bhuj, Cambay and Sufra, which now controlled by the Guptas. Then Chandragupta II got his daughter Prabhavati Gupta married to Rudrasena II, the Vakataka king of the Deccan, and gained a valuable ally, that means the friendship. The Vakatakas helped him against the Satraps. Then he also controlled the Bengal. He extended his control from coast to coast. His significant achievement was establishing a second capital at Ujjain for the purpose of trading. Then here he married Kubera Naga, a Naga princess. This alliance helped him in his Shaka campaign. He attacked the Satraps and the Shaka ruler ended by 400 CE. Thus he took the title that Shakari, or the destroyer of Shakas. Then Chandragupta II took the title Vikramaditya. Already I told you the meaning, one whose splendor equal to that of the sun. Despite many wars, his reign is remembered for achievements in literature, culture, art and science. The Chinese scholar and the traveller Fai Yan, who visited Gupta period during the rule of Chandragupta II, recorded much of these. Chandragupta II also established trade relations with Rome and Egypt. He issued a number of gold coins. The purity of the metal indicates the prosperity of his empire. Though a staunch Hindu, he encouraged and patronized Buddhist learning, and it was during his reign that the universities of Takshila and Nalanda flourished. He was noted for his sense of justice and fair play. His citizens were in awe of his wisdom, which spun into the legends of Vikramaditya and Betal. Now you could see some of the coins. Some of the coins which was minted during his period. The king as a lion slayer. Here the lion was with the Samudraguptas, and this Vikramaditya, Chandragupta II, Vikramaditya's is the tiger. He is slaying the tiger, Vikramasimha coin. Then it's about that prosperity. To know about the prosperity, they gave much importance to that goddess Lakshmi also. So the king and the queen type, these are the other things to show their prosperity, and these are the other coins, might be for some cultural or the other things. Okay, so these are the coins printed minted during the period of Gupta Empire.